So, you might have heard about bottom watering when it comes to watering your seedlings that you're growing on in your greenhouse. But what exactly is this and why is it so beneficial for these to grow nice and strong? Well, I'm going to show you exactly why within this video. You might notice that I've got some of my seedlings on big trays like this with some fabric. And this is kind of exactly what you're going to need if you want to do the most effective bottom watering technique. Now, as you know, you need to keep regularly on top of watering your seedlings or they start to dry out. You can notice many of these have already started to dry out from the top, especially some of the ones where there's no real activity yet. And that's a problem because you need to keep your seedlings moist. Of course, you don't want to overwater them, that would be a big problem, but you do need to keep them moist so they can get all of the nutrients that they need. So, how exactly do you effectively do this without just going out there every single day spraying them to keep them nice and moist? Well, there's a much more effective way, and that is bottom watering. And as I mentioned, that comes from these trays. Now, as you can see, it's just a simple plastic tray. It'll fit several of these little seed cells, and on it, there's this piece of fabric. Now, I just got this one from the garden center, but I'm sure if you were able to get a similar sort of fabric material like this, and just a basic tray, you could easily do it yourself. But, I was lazy. I found it easier just to get one from the garden center, so that's exactly what I did. And this is what's going to help us do bottom watering. Now, you might have heard already that it's much better to water your seedlings from the bottom because then the roots will be encouraged to grow down. If you just water them from the top, the roots won't really try and do very much. They won't go searching for that water. Whereas if you do it at the bottom, the roots will go searching, which is great because it means you're going to have a stronger root system. So with some of these, I didn't water them on the top at all, so they're very straggly on the top and they don't really have strong roots. Whereas others, like these that I have watered from the top, are much, much stronger, and you can see that when you sort of pluck them out. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to grab my little mister that I've got here and I'm going to water from the bottom. Now I'm going to effectively use this like a watering can. I'm just going to fill this tray up at the bottom. You could lift up your seedlings if you want to, but I find this is still a very effective way of getting everything nice and wet. However, for the first time that you're doing this, you probably want to lift everything off of the tray and water it very strenuously, maybe with like a watering can. I just find it easier to use my sprayer because it's already in here. We're basically just going to make sure that it's really nice and wet on this material. We of course don't want to drown our seedlings. We just want to keep everything really nice and moist, especially so that it won't just immediately dry up. Now, this is great because this little mat here is really going to retain that moisture. As you can see, it's fantastic for doing that. The water doesn't sit there just in the tray. Instead, it kind of soaks into this mat and it's going to stay like that for a while now. Now, the roots are basically going to be searching for that water, which is great, but also it'll keep the very bottom of your soil where you can see the compost coming out nice and moist. And that will sort of travel up into the little cell or the pot that you've got. So this is a fantastic way of keeping things nice and wet without having to spray them on top. Now, of course, you can spray them on top if you want, but this really isn't the best way for encouraging roots. When you're first starting up your seedlings, I definitely would do this at least a little bit, just to keep them nice and wet. I do recommend, however, that you don't use a watering can. I recommend instead you use a sprayer, a mister, whatever you want to call it, like this. You can kind of adjust how strong it is. I like it sort of like this because you don't want to disturb those seedlings, and especially you don't want to disturb the seeds when they're trying to do things. So yeah, you can water like this if you want to, but generally I recommend bottom watering. I think it makes a lot more sense. So with some of these that I haven't bottom watered, I don't have them in proper trays yet, they really go dry super quickly, and that's not effective for them whatsoever. They're going to suffer like that, and if they dry out, yeah, they're going to die. Not to mention the fact that, of course, just as much as you can underwater something, you can also overwater as well. And that's another big problem that you really want to avoid. You don't want to be overwatering your seedlings and then they all drown. That's just the opposite of the problem, but still a massive problem. So I think this is a much better way of doing things. Like I said, I maybe would lift them And regularly check as well that this mat at the bottom, this fabric, is staying nice and wet, because obviously if it isn't, then you're not doing it effectively and you need to water maybe a little bit more. But yeah, just keep this nice and moist, and you'll find that bottom watering is a fantastic technique for your seedlings to grow really strong roots and just be watered in a more sort of automatic way. So happy growing. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you for another video.